Hello, 8th graders. This is Mr. Duplanche, that guy you see in the stairwell each morning and afternoon, with a math video for you guys. For this Khan Academy video, we're going to be solving equations with variables on both sides. So we got a list of our steps right there. Then we're going to break down. The first one, I like to organize my work. I'm going to do that just by drawing a line through an equal sign to keep my work organized. Next thing we're going to do is distribute, but luckily in all these equations we don't have to distribute, but we will be labeling and combining like terms. So what I like to do to label my like terms is look on my left side, and I see negative f, I'm going to put a square around that, and I see plus 4f. Those are my like terms on the left. On the right I have none, and I'm going to combine them before doing anything else. So negative f plus 4f is going to get us 3f plus 2 equals 8 minus 3f. So once we've combined alike terms, the last steps are performing inverse operations to keep the equation balanced and to solve for the variable. When we talk about inverse operations, we're talking about the opposite operations. So the opposite of addition being subtraction, the opposite of multiplication being division. Those are the operations we're going to be dealing with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to switch to a new color. Let's do that nice green. I usually like to tackle my constants first. So I see this plus 2 and this 8. So my goal is to isolate the variables. So I'm going to try to get this plus 2 off my left side. I'm going to do that by subtracting 2 to both sides to not only keep my equation balanced, but to also isolate the variable to solve for them. So 2 minus 2 is going to cancel out and be 0. 8 minus 2 is going to end up being 6. So I rewrite my equation, trying to keep it as organized as possible, like so. So now I'm left with 3f equals 6 minus 3f. So the next part, we're going to be looking at our our variables tied to our coefficients, and we're going to try to put that on our left side. So I'm looking at this minus 3f on my right, and I'm going to do the inverse of that, plus 3f, that's a bad color, to then cancel it off my right side and add it onto my left side, and I'm going to end up with 6f equals 6. Notice how we're adding 3f to both sides to keep our equation balanced. So for my last step, I gotta look at this 6f equals 6. I know what operation is happening between my variable and coefficient, and that is multiplication. So to get f by itself, I need to do the inverse of it, or opposite. In this case, our inverse of multiplication will be division. So I'm going to divide each side by the coefficient, and we're going to end up with f equals 1. So let's try another one. Solve for c. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to organize my work, and this time we're going to use a nice blue, a nice Duke blue. Sorry, Pip. So we don't have to distribute this time, luckily, but we should label and combine like terms. In this case, all of our expressions on each side are simplified, so we can skip that step. And we could go right into performing inverse operations to keep the equation balanced and solve for the variable. In this case, it's c. So the first thing, I'm going to attack the easiest number. I'm looking at this minus 4. I'm thinking what the inverse of that is, and the inverse of minus 4 will be plus 4. To keep my equation balanced, I do it at both sides. Keep my work organized. This cancels out because negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So we're going to end up with 12c equals 14c I add 4 to negative 10, and I get minus 6. Now, for my next step, I still need to isolate my variable. So I'm going to try to get on the left side and get out for this right side. So I know I see this plus 14c. I know the opposite of that would be subtracting. I do it to both sides to keep it balanced. I end up with this canceling out. And we're going to end up with negative 2c equals negative 6. Finally, I'm left with a coefficient and variable. To get that variable by itself, I realize this is multiplication between a variable and a coefficient, and I need to perform the opposite or the inverse operation multiplication to get divide both sides by negative 2, not 2. This cancels out. C ends up equaling 3. Look at that. Graph paper saves lives. All right, so let's look at 2 more. Let me move my directions lower. Look at this, guys. I can drag that lower so you can see it. Look at that. So my first step is I'm going to organize my work. I'm going to draw that line right down the middle. Do I have to distribute? Nope. Do I have any combined? Do I have to combine any like terms on my left or right side? No. So I just go to it, attacking those constants. I see a plus 5. I see a 1. The opposite of or inverse of adding 5 would be minus 5. So I'm going to do that to both sides to keep our equation balanced. We are going to end up with 4b equals negative 4 plus 5a. I'm not done because I see some variables still hanging out with coefficients. So I'm going to box that in, and now I'm going to deal with that. The inverse of adding 5b, that looks like a 56, my bad handwriting, would be subtracting 5b. Subtract 5b from both sides to keep it balanced. This would cancel out. I'm going to be left with negative 1b equals negative 4. Like we did the past 2 times, I know when I have a variable tied to a coefficient, I understand it as multiplication. The inverse of that would be to divide by the coefficient. So I'm going to divide both sides by a coefficient. I'm going to put b equals positive 4. So for one more example, if you're not tired of hearing from me yet, I'm going to organize my work before Miss Nowini yells at me. I don't have to distribute. That's a later problems. And I'm going to label and combine like terms. Wait, is that the same question? Oh my gosh, it is. But we're going to do it in a different way. So before, we decided to look at our constants first, but we're going to do a little different way. This time we're going to deal with those coefficients that tied to variables. To show we could use different ways, multiple ways to skin a cat, right? So I'm going to label and combine my like terms. I already did that. Oops. And perform inverse operations. So the opposite or inverse of positive 4b would be subtracting 4b from both sides. That would cancel out. We end up with 5 equals 1 plus 1b. I'm going to do a capital B so we can understand. I'm left with my constants. This time, I'm going to label them so I know what I'm dealing with. No surprises here. I'm going to subtract 1 from my right side because that is the inverse of plus 1. And I'm going to do the same to the left side to keep it balanced. That cancels out. I'm going to be left with 4 equals 1b, which is the same as, well, we could go through all the steps, divide both sides by 1, even though we don't have to, and b is going to equal 4. So you can see, no matter which you decide to deal with, either variables or your constants, you can end up with the same answer. So remember your steps, organize your work, distribute if you need to, probably not, label and combine like terms, and then perform those inverse operations to keep the equation balanced and solve for variable. It's a great time spending probably more than 4 minutes with you with my monotone voice. Make sure you remember those inverse operations.